I was recently transfixed on this story of the Titan submersible vehicle that we all know now imploded deep in the ocean somewhere. It's one of those stories that we hear every once in a while that just absolutely captivates the heart, I think, and the mind. And the reason is because we picture ourselves there in that tiny little vehicle. Don't you? Don't you imagine yourself there with them, wondering what happened, whether they were in the dark, whether they were in the cold, whether they were running out of oxygen, whether they were panicking or staying calm. It's kind of like the story of the kids in the cave in Thailand a few years ago. Remember when the water rose and that soccer team got trapped in there? It's hard to watch these things and not imagine ourselves right there along with them, perhaps suffering or even dying, wondering what would we be like? What would we do? How would we hold up under similar conditions? You know, believe it or not, Jonathan Edwards, in his ninth resolution, he says something to this effect. Edwards says that it's good, he says, resolved to think much on all occasions of my own dying and the common circumstances which attended death. Now, of his 70 resolutions, and I've written a book on them, Holy Living, this is probably not my favorite resolution because I don't really like to think about my own demise, and probably you don't either. Many of Edwards' resolutions are far more positive than that, to live for the glory of God, to live with all of my might while I do live, etc. And yet resolution 9, it just kind of hangs there for me with this gravitas and this weight to it, because I do think that Edwards is actually onto something really important. I think he's right that it is good for us to think about our own death from time to time. Now notice again, if we look at resolution 9, he says the common circumstances which attend to death, as it's not very common to die in a submersible vehicle trying to explore the Titanic or to get trapped in a cave or something like that. But there is going to be some circumstance, whatever it is, perhaps not nearly as exciting or dynamic as that, those circumstances which will attend our own death. And Edwards says it's good to think about that from time to time. Why is that? Well, let me give you 5 reasons really quickly why I think it is a good exercise to contemplate our own mortality. First, it does do something towards helping us to accept the inevitability of our death. I know someone personally who's well along in years who cannot think about their own death. I don't even want to reveal anything about this person, but let's just say if things carry out as they normally do, they'd be closer to me than death. Although, who knows, I could die today in a traffic accident or something like that. But statistically speaking, my goodness, I mean, our time is going to run out eventually, right? In fact, that's true for every single living creature, not just us, human beings who are made in the image of God, but every tree, every bush, every plant, every animal, every mammal, every insect, every single cell organism is eventually going to die. And the reality is that you and I are going to die too. And so it's probably a healthy thing for us at some point to accept the inevitability of our own mortality. Secondly, it really does help us to frame up our perspective on the troubles of life. I want you to think right now with me about whatever is the hardest thing that you're going through. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's your marriage, maybe it's raising a difficult child, maybe it's your taxes, maybe it's your job, maybe your car's broken down or your pool's leaking or your hot water tank has just blown up. I don't know what it is. But death has a way, thinking about it, even just conceptually, of framing these troubles up into perspective so that really, it really does kind of reduce the troubles of life to the very real necessities of what it is we're supposed to actually be focusing on. And that brings me to my third point, that thinking of our own death really does recall to me and help to rejuvenate for me my purpose and my mission in life. What am I here to do? Well, the Westminster Shorter Catechism tells us, for those of you who are Reformed Christians as I am, that the chief end of man is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. That's it. That's why I am alive. But subaltimate, or underneath that, I am a dad, I am a husband, I am a pastor of a church, and I have other responsibilities that I need to take care of. And if I think about the fact that my time is short, eventually I will run out of time. What it does is it helps me to compact my priorities so that I can focus on the things that are really the most important priorities of my life. And that's probably a very good thing. Fourthly, it helps me to prepare my soul for eternity. Now I'm going to get serious with you here for just a moment. The thought of death presses me towards repentance in life. And that's exactly what I need to do. Because if I'm going to go one day to meet my maker and my judge, how much better it is to meet him with a soul that has been unburdened from my guilt and my shame. And the way we do that as Christian believers is we take our guilt and our sin and our shame directly to the cross of Jesus Christ, and we plead with him for forgiveness. And he is merciful and compassionate, abounding in his grace, and he is all the more desirous to give us that forgiveness. So thinking about my own death presses me towards that repentance which leads to life. And then fifthly and finally, I do hope that thinking of your own death from time to time does make you all the more thankful for the things that you have in the present. Look at your life. You've got people that love you. You've got a purpose before you. You have responsibilities and people that depend on you. You have all kinds of things for which you need to be thankful. Now, yes, I get it. You've got anxieties and worries and troubles too. Those things are in the mix. But the thought that our demise is eventual and in fact necessary does help us to really be all the more grateful for what God has given us that is very good in our lives. And if we're completely honest, he's given us a lot to be thankful for. Well, thank you so much for checking into this video. I do love you lots, and we'll talk to you later.